All right, let's just get right into it. If you've ever tried to make your Python code faster by running a bunch of tasks at the same time, you probably know that feeling, right? Your code just becomes this tangled, complicated mess. But what if I told you there's a way to manage all that complexity with just a couple of lines of code? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on one of Python's most elegant solutions for doing just that. This really gets to the heart of the whole problem. It's from a junior developer, we'll call him Timothy, and it just perfectly captures that feeling of having to manually start, stop, and keep track of every single little process. It is absolutely exhausting, and you just know there has to be a better way. So, let's take a closer look at this micromanager's problem. This isn't just about feeling overwhelmed. It's about how that frustration shows up right there in your code, making it super brittle and just a nightmare to read later on. Okay, so here's what Timothy was up against. He had to analyze 20 different chess matches, and his first instinct, a totally normal one, was to spin up 20 separate processes, one for each match. But that meant he had to manually start every single one and then manually wait for every single one of them to finish. The result, as you can see, it was just a tangled mess of code that was basically impossible to manage. And all that frustration led Timothy to ask the absolute perfect question. This is the million-dollar question for anyone doing parallel computing, isn't it? How do you stop being the hands-on foreman, getting into the weeds, and instead become the manager who just hands over a stack of work and says, get it done? How do you let the system handle the details for you? Well, the answer comes from his senior colleague, a developer named Margaret, who introduces this brilliant mental model. She says, forget about processes and threads for a second. We're going to think about this like a talent agency. Okay, so technically, the solution is something called a process pool. The textbook definition is that it's a manager that handles a fixed number of worker processes to execute tasks. But that's a little dry, right? A little academic. The talent agency model, that's where this whole idea really clicks and comes to life. So let's lean into Margaret's metaphor. A process pool isn't just a collection of workers. It is a full-service talent agency for your CPU. You're the client, and you've got a ton of work that needs to get done fast. So here's how it works. First, you tell the agency how many desks you have available. Those are your CPU cores. Then you just hand over the entire stack of work, all 20 of those chess matches. The agency takes it from there. It sends a worker to each available desk with a task. And here's the magic. The moment a worker finishes, the agency doesn't wait around. It immediately hands them the very next task from the pile. There's no downtime, no manual intervention from you. It just works. And this is the crucial point, the big shift in mindset. Your job fundamentally changes. You stop worrying about the individual workers, the processes. Your only responsibility is to define the work and hand it over. The agency, the pool, handles all the messy logistics. All right, so let's get practical. Let's look at the code and see how this amazing concept turns into something that's incredibly simple and powerful. This is where you really see the payoff. Man, this slide says it all, doesn't it? It's a perfect illustration of the transformation in your role. On the left, you've got the foreman approach. You're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're tangled up in the weeds of manually managing every little thing. But on the right, you've got the agent model. You're calm, you're efficient, and you're delegating all that hard work with one single beautiful command. All those messy loops for starting and joining processes, gone, replaced by one elegant line of code. Now, you might have noticed a key piece of syntax in that new code, the with statement. I want you to think of this as the safe room for your processes. It's an absolutely critical part of the puzzle that makes sure everything is handled safely and cleaned up properly when you're done. So what does this safe room actually do? Well, using the with statement guarantees that when your block of code is finished, the talent agency automatically closes up shop. It tells all the workers to go home, it shuts down all the desks. And this is so important because it prevents something called zombie processes. Those are basically finished processes that don't get cleaned up properly and just hang around, eating up your computer's memory for no reason. Okay, so now that we get the concept, how do we actually use it in practice? Well, Margaret, our awesome senior engineer, put together this super handy cheat sheet to help us choose the right tool for the job. Let's break this down real quick. For a simple list of items, like Timothy's chess matches, pool.map is your go-to. It's simple and effective. But what if your function needed to analyze each match against, say, a specific opponent? Now you have two arguments. For that, you'd use pool.starMap. And finally, Imagine some of those chess matches are super quick to analyze, while others take forever. If you want to get the results as soon as they're ready, instead of waiting for the absolute slowest one to finish, pool.imap is the perfect tool for that job. To wrap things up, Margaret left Timothy with 4 essential rules for really mastering the process pool. Think of this as the specialist's wisdom that will save you from countless headaches down the road. Rule number 1, let Python do the heavy lifting for you. When you create your pool, you don't actually have to specify the number of processes. If you just leave it blank, Python is smart enough to detect how many CPU cores your machine has, and it'll create one worker for each. It's the simplest way to get the maximum performance out of your hardware. Okay, rule number 2 is a reminder, and it's a reminder because it is that important. Always, always, always use the with statement. I really can't stress this enough. It is the single best way to guarantee your talent agency shuts down cleanly and you don't leave those memory-hogging zombie processes lurking around. Third, and this one is crucial, know when to use this tool. Process pools are the absolute gold standard for CPU-bound work. We're talking heavy-duty tasks that require a lot of calculation, like analyzing huge data sets or rendering an image. They are the wrong tool for I/O-bound tasks, which are jobs that mostly involve just waiting. Things like downloading a file or fetching data from a database. For those kinds of waiting games, other tools like Threads or Async I/O are a much, much better fit. And that brings us to the 4th and final rule, which is really the big idea behind all of this. When you use a process pool, you have fundamentally decoupled the worker from the task. You are no longer in the business of managing individual processes. Your job is to focus on the data, to prepare the work. You let Python, the ultimate talent agent, handle all of the labor. So, there you have it. You've learned the secret. You have the mental model and the code to transform your parallel tasks from a chaotic mess into an elegant, efficient system. The only question left is, are you ready to stop being a foreman and start acting as the agent?